This episode of Dark Dialogue contains detailed discussions of violent crime and autopsy findings related to the murder of April Millsap. Some descriptions may be graphic, unsettling, or distressing, particularly for younger listeners or those sensitive to such content. Listener discretion is strongly advised. We encourage you to care for your well-being first. If at any point the material feels overwhelming, please pause and return only if you feel comfortable. Close your eyes. You're walking down the Macomb Orchard Trail. The asphalt patch stretches about 8 feet wide, the kind of trail used every day by bikers, joggers, and families. The summer air is thick, hot, heavy with the smell of cut grass drifting in from nearby fields. But here, inside the canopy of dense trees, shadows pull in tight. The trail is quiet, too quiet. And then you hear it. Not footsteps, not voices, but a dog. A frantic barking, sharp and uneven. A tone that doesn't sound protective, but panicked, desperate. You follow the sound about 20 feet off the trail. The ground slants down quickly. The slope steepens until you're starting into a drainage ditch, about 3 to 4 feet deep. The earth is soft here, rimmed with brambles, grasping branches, and tangles of thick brush that hide whatever lies beneath. Casual walkers would pass right by and never see what you're about to see. You push through. Branches crack, leaves snag against your arms, and there, at the bottom of the gully, stands the dog, a black and white border collie, barking, whining, refusing to move from its vigil in the ditch. At first glance, you're not entirely sure what you're looking at. A mannequin, maybe. Something pale and still, half hidden in the brush. But no, it takes only a second longer to register. It's a body. You step closer, down into the ditch, your boots pressing into the soft earth. April Millsap lies stretched on her back. Her clothing is in disarray, and instantly it tells you a story of violence. Her shirt and bra are shoved down to her waist, the bra torn in two at the center. Her shorts and underwear tangled around her ankles. She's barefoot, and nearby, scattered to the north of her position, are her white tennis shoes, tossed carelessly into the brush. Your gaze shifts up, her face, her neck. At first, you see bruising, scratches, swelling that distorts her features. But then it strikes you. These aren't just bruises. These are patterns, impressions. Across her skin, pressed deep into her flesh, are the marks of a shoe sole. A herringbone tread pattern stamped across her jaw, her throat, her chest. And more than that, embedded on her cheek, clear as if it were branded there, the Jumpman logo from a Nike Air Jordan sneaker. The attacker didn't just strike her. He stomped her with enough force to leave the very symbol of his shoe behind on her skin. Her teeth are loosened, some forced out of place. There is blood matted through her hair, streaked across her face, and in her right hand, she is holding something. Her fingers clutched tightly around torn leaf fragments, ripped from the ground as she fought in those final moments. Behind her right ear, you notice movement, not from her, but from insects, fly eggs already forming. To a trained eye, that tiny detail is chilling. It places her death within the last hour. Now you take in the scene as a whole. You're in a dense, wooded thicket. Trees press close. The ditch is steep enough to obscure almost everything from the trail below. If you had walked past just feet away, you wouldn't have seen this. Unless you'd been called down here by that dog, her loyal companion, still pacing, still crying, still standing guard over his girl. Pieces are missing. You note them almost immediately. April's backpack, her cell phone, ordinary items she would have carried on her walk are gone, taken, perhaps hidden. perhaps kept. Everywhere you look, the story deepens. The partial disrobing, the torn bra, the position of clothing, the signs of a sexual assault attempt are unmistakable, and yet there's no semen, no physical evidence that the act was completed. Something stopped it. Something forced the attacker away. You step back from the body. The full picture sharpens into focus. A young girl, 14 years old, forced from the safety of the trail into this concealed ditch, stripped, beaten, stomped to death by deliberate crushing force. Her life ended in violence. Her body left hidden under cover of thick brush. Her dog refusing, even now, to leave her side. It's the kind of crime scene that doesn't just tell a story. It punches one into you. Every detail screams not of chance, but of intent. And with each mark left by the killer's shoe, the woods themselves seem to hold their breath. Because what lies here in this ditch is not only the tragic end of April Millsap's walk, it's the beginning of a manhunt. Hey, Angela, how's it going tonight?
It's going okay. How are you?
I'm pretty damn good, actually. It's really good to be back in this seat doing what we love to do again. It's been way too freaking long. Yeah. It's been a bit of a damn nightmare. Oh, yeah, I'll do my best. I don't know, we might end up with something totally new. It's been so freaking long, but that does remind me to, thank you to the listeners out there that have bared with us through this. It's been a bitch. But we're kind of coming out on the other side of it, so...
It's been my first.
Yeah, I mean, I just really had no choice. Got to take care of your family when they need you, and then I turned around and got sick.
How dare you?
So, I'm feeling better. I'm pretty much over, but I still got the cough and crap, so, if my voice it's definitely not back to normal, so it might be a little bit weak tonight. It might cough and hack and gag and whatever, so forewarning you.
Exciting stuff happening here today.
Exactly. So, but when searchers found April Millsap's body in the trees, are made to stop breathing. It wasn't just the violence of it, the blunt force trauma, the strangulation. It was where it happened. A trail used by kids, dog walkers, neighbors. One minute it was a safe place, and the next it was a damn crime scene.
And the brutality of it shook everyone. You've got a 14-year-old girl just out walking her dog, and she ends up left in the woods like trash. No explanation, no suspect, just that haunting text, and then silence. And the town never saw it coming.
Yeah. So listeners, welcome back to Dark Dialogue, the podcast where we unravel the shadows of the human mind and dive deep into the mysteries that haunt small towns and big cities alike. I'm your host, John.
And I'm Angela, and together we shine a light on the stories that keep us up at night. Unsolved disappearances, lives stolen too soon, and the questions that refuse to be buried.
In this episode, we're stepping into the first days of the investigation. The discovery of April's body, what the autopsy revealed, how the crime scene was processed, and the immediate fear that spread through the community.
We'll look at law enforcement's early response, the wave of public tips, and how digital clues, including April's Fitbit and phone data, gave investigators their first real direction.
So, before we begin, just a quick reminder, if you're listening now, follow the show, leave a review, and share this episode. Every listen helps keep April's story alive, and every share could bring one more person into the fight for justice. And I can't really explain it. I don't know how all this stuff works, but thumbs ups, likes, all that, it really, really helps us. So if you're listening, just take a split second, give us that thumbs up, give us that like, and I don't know why, but it does help a lot.
It does. So, my friend, John, let's talk about the trail, the trees, and the nightmare that began to unfold on that hot July night.
All right. So, it's been a while. It's been a little bit since episode 1, came out. So, let's kind of recap that day and everything that has led up to where we're at tonight. So
please do.
Like I said in the last episode, April was a normal 14-year-old girl on summer vacation. So she wasn't up at 5 o'clock in the morning. She slept in until somewhere around noon is when she woke up. And, we don't know for sure, but right around that time. And she spends the morning at home. She was texting with her friends, making casual plans, being a 14-year-old teenage girl, absolutely no indication of any distress or any unusual behavior at all. And then by that afternoon, she prepares herself lunch, which was a salad, and she chats with her stepfather. And, if you'll remember, we're calling him her stepfather. I don't know if technically he was, but in every way that matters, he definitely was.
Right.
Whether he was married to her mom or not is really irrelevant, because he was a freaking stand-up dude that met her when she was a little girl and stood in as her father throughout her life. So, and then around 5 o'clock, she begins getting ready for her walk. And, like we talked about, she walked her dog Penny every day. And if you remember, she had kind of this body shaming issue, which I don't understand. She was a very pretty girl. But it's the same nonsense every teenager kind of deals with. So she was going through that. She wanted to be healthy, and so she had this fitness tracker app on her phone, and she was trying to eat good. So she ate a salad that day, and then she got ready to take her dog Penny on a walk. And there was a couple reasons for that. One, she wanted to exercise and everything, but two, she loved Penny. And if you remember, she was going to be a vet. She had this affinity for animals just in general. And Penny was her bud. And so she just walked that dog every day.
And Penny loved her.
And Penny, of course, adored her. And so around 5:30, she leaves her home with Penny, and she took a small backpack, her cell phone, and her mother, Jennifer, exchanged a quick goodbye. We've all been there. Yep. She's headed out. It probably wasn't any kind of a long drawn out ordeal. It's like, okay, sweetheart, be careful. We'll see you in an hour or whatever it was, And so at 5:34, she activates her fitness tracking app and begins to log her route. And so at 5:50, witnesses Amy and Gail Spinella embark on a bike ride on that same trail, and they stopped at a Marathon gas station near the trail. And that's a detail that's used to help place April, and who we're going to learn is the piece of shit scumbag a little bit later. So by 6 p.m., multiple witnesses report seeing April on the trail with a man on a blue and white motorcycle. And then at 6:20, April's fitness app logs a noticeable increase in her walking pace and a directional change, which investigators believe indicates her reaction to this guy on the motorcycle. And then at 6:25, eyewitnesses Eric Reski and his daughters and Mary and Douglas Stein see April walking Penny near a man on a motorcycle. Mary Stein later recalls April's tight, tense smile and, quote, anger in the man's eyes, which are chilling details and which will later, become crucial. And so around 6:26 to 6:27 is when prosecutors maintain the physical altercation likely begins. And that's supported by mostly the evidence of this fitness tracker app. I mean, this thing, short of being a video camera that recorded everything, it is as good as you get for really seeing exactly what happened. And, unfortunately on a podcast, we can't show it, but man, when you look at the track and what is going on with that fitness app, I mean, it just spells it out.
Did it track like blood pressure and like heartbeats and fear and all that?
If it did, it wasn't.
I'm kind of, thank God, and kind of like.
Yeah. So, first of all, I don't think that MyFitnessPal does that because it's not a wearable. It's on your phone. There might be a wearable component to it, but she didn't have that. So, and this was, a little, I think Apple Watch was out and stuff at this time, but that's been relatively recently that wearables have become such a huge thing. And so this wouldn't have tracked that, but it definitely tracked her movements. And you can see as she starts running and then runs off the trail, and you can tell she's trying to escape somebody.
Scary enough to look at.
Oh, it's terrifying. If you see it, if you look at the way that it tracks out, it's terrifying. And it's, like I said, it's just second to having a video of the whole thing because you essentially watch it all unfold. So just after 6:28 p.m., and this is based on the data from the fitness app and forensic findings, it's believed that April was struck from behind with what we're going to find out is a motorcycle helmet and dragged into the woods, and this violent attack began. And then at 6:31, 6:32, and 6:33, April's phone makes 3 consecutive calls to non-working 810 area code number. So it's interpreted as a desperate attempt to maybe reach help. And so from 6:30 to 8 is the murder window, with all the evidence indicating that the attack likely took place between 6:25 and 6:44. And so April suffers severe blunt trauma, asphyxiation. I mean, we're going to be going through what they found in the autopsy. It's about as brutal as you're going to find. It's not good. That's why I gave the warning at the beginning is this. And really when we began this series, this is a tough one. And then at 6:44, April's phone leaves the crime scene, and its GPS data shows movement between 18 and 22 miles an hour. So we know it's not her anymore. It more closely matches the speed of a motorcycle. And then by 7, Jennifer Millsap, April's mom, grows concerned when she doesn't return home. And, she starts calling. She reached out to Austin, who, if you remember, is her boyfriend who they were, fighting with. At 7:44, Austin finally checks his phone and sees this cryptic OMFG, I think I almost got kidnapped text. And around 8 p.m. is when joggers Sadaj and his fiancée, wife, whatever their relationship was, they see Penny, and Penny leads them down to find April's body in the ditch. And then obviously police are called at that time, and the investigation kind of begins. So I think that's a pretty good recap of where we left it after episode number 1. I mean, this...
Buddy, but dogs don't understand.
Yeah, this whole story is just, it's just heartbreaking. Every piece of it. So talking about the crime scene, and we touched on it quite a bit in episode 1, but her body was found in a drainage ditch, which was approximately 20 to 30 feet off Macomb Orchard Trail. And there was a downward slope, which dropped roughly 3 to 4 feet from the trail down to this ditch. And then around the trail, there's thick brush, saplings, trees. Like I said in the last episode, it's really a beautiful trail. It's lined on both sides with trees and stuff. The unfortunate thing is it also gives a lot of concealment to somebody that is up to no good. And so the forensic significance of all this suggests that April was forced from the trail into a more secluded spot, and which that indicates probably some kind of premeditation, or at least an intent to avoid any immediate detection. And the lack of visibility reinforces that it wasn't a spontaneous collapse or an accident. She didn't go into that ditch of her own accord.
Accident.
Right. So, as I said in the intro segment, April was found lying on her back down in that ditch. Her clothing was disturbed. Her bra and her shirt were pulled down to her waist. Her bra was ripped. Her shorts and her underwear were pulled down around her ankles. And so obviously the forensic significance of that finding is an attempted sexual assault. I mean, I think that's just as clear as it possibly could be. Her shoes were off her feet and they were found ways north of her body. So she was in her bare feet, and that indicates some significant force with the attacker probably yanked her or dragged her, causing her shoes to come off. And, you know, the scattering shows that there was a significant struggle that was going on. And then the way this poor girl's body looked is absolutely horrible. Like I said in the intro, she had abrasions and bruising all over her body, across her face and her neck. She had shoe impressions kind of all over. And to the extent, like I said in the intro, where the Nike Jumpman logo was visible on her face.
Damn.
Her teeth were knocked loose. She had injuries to her chin, to her throat, with the shoe tread patterns kind of all over her. I mean, it's about as violent of an attack as you're going to hear of. She had blood in her hair, across her face. There was blood spatter on the trees around her body. So she had significant head trauma. And, you know, any head injury bleeds significantly, you know, and so it was likely a lot of blood. And then her hands were clutching, you know, leaves and grass and stuff, which kind of confirms that, you know, she was trying to grab hold of something as somebody was dragging her down that freaking embankment. And then, again, like I said, fly eggs were found present behind her right ear, which indicates her time of death somewhere between 30 and 60 minutes prior to when this investigation started. I mean, it's pretty remarkable that it happens that quickly. You know, you end up with fly eggs within half an hour of your death. It's just like almost immediately. But it is notable that she left the house with her backpack and her cell phone, and both of those were not found. They're not near the body. And so we know that the attacker removed them, whether he took them as a souvenir or, you know, what he was doing. We know that the attacker had to have taken at least her backpack and her phone because they were with her and now they're gone. So, you know, the evidence that we find really, I mean, it paints a horrible, gruesome picture. You know, we have this little girl that is forced off the path, either drug or however it looks. It looks like she was drugged from the path and overpowered. And then there was an attempted sexual assault. And then, I don't know, just the most brutal beating that you could fathom.
Yeah. So according to this page, the abrasion of leaving the emblem can be caused by a force of about 1.5 to 2 times the person's body weight applied to the small area.
So I'm guessing this piece of shit was roughly 190, 200 pounds, something like that. So you're talking, you know, 400, 500 pounds of force to leave that. I mean, it was a brutal attack.
Why it struck me to wonder, I don't know, but
yeah, but I mean, you know, it just speaks to what a brutal attack this was, you know, and
to nearly twice his body weight to a 14-year-old girl.
Yeah, so essentially he's jumping on this poor girl, you know, and I don't know really why it is. It's not any worse, I guess. You know, you hear like a beating with a baseball bat or a 2x4 or something, and somehow it's not as bad as stomping on somebody. And maybe it's because, and not to get too morbid here, but, if you get hit in the head with a baseball bat, you're probably incapacitated almost instantly. When somebody's stomping on your head, trust me, I've been there. I've been in fights where I got on the ground and somebody started kicking me in the head. It's not a fast ordeal. And obviously I wasn't being murdered. I was just having the shit kicked out of me. But it's not like an instantaneous you're out and don't know what the hell's going on type of deal. I don't know. It's just brutal. It just turns your stomach to even think about what this poor little girl went through. And then, around 8:00 is when the joggers found her body. They notified police immediately. And, like I said in episode 1, the cops, they handled this thing textbook. They went in there, they cordoned off the crime scene. They began searching immediately. And Jennifer and Austin show up looking for her, if you remember, and they were told to go to the police station. And that's kind of where we're going to pick things up at this point. So they are taken in for questioning. Detectives Joseph Swink and the Michigan State Police Sergeant Ray Patrick bring April's mom and Austin, her boyfriend. They meet them down at the station, and it's just standard protocol. It sucks, and I've never been in this situation, but I can only imagine, your daughter is, missing at this point, and now you're being asked to go to the police station. So, it's not good news that they have for you. And then you're also suspected of it. It's got to be extraordinarily hard for the parents. It has to be equally as difficult, or maybe not equally, but it has to suck ass for the police to be in that situation as well, because that is their job. Unfortunately, we know that more times than not, if somebody's murdered, they're murdered by somebody they know, and often somebody they love. And so, and as sad as it is to say, parents are not exempt from that equation. There was just the douchebag in Canada that, reported his daughter missing, and then once they found her body and everything, he was arrested and charged with it. That just happened a month ago or something like that.
Guy they're still looking for.
That piece of shit up in Washington, yeah, exactly. So we know that unfortunately it happens. So the cops are literally just doing their job, but it has to suck for everybody involved. The parents, they're going to be mad. Of course, I would be. The cops, they're put in this terrible situation.
Mad, scared.
Right. Yep. But it's really crucial, especially with Austin, because of this text message. And we're going to be talking about he doesn't do the right thing. Austin acts like a dumbass kid and makes some really dumbass decisions that make him look a hell of a lot worse. And so, but that message, like I said earlier, was, I think I almost got kidnapped, OMFG. And so, and he never looked at that, like we said, for a couple of hours, because they were fighting and he was being a bratty little 14-year-old, like we all were at 14, and then her stepdad's position. He's there supporting Jennifer. And if you remember, Jennifer called him. She has a very bad speech impediment. And when she's excited, she's very hard to understand. And so he was finally able to decipher that she was headed to the police station. So he heads down there and learns what the hell's going on. And so Austin's parents are then also brought down to the police station because he needs to be questioned. He's a minor. Mom and dad need to be present. They're brought in at the same time. And so Austin is questioned for several hours by the Armada detectives and also Macomb County and the Michigan State Police. And again, it just really speaks, and I can't say enough about this police department, because
finally,
yeah. And so I think they realized immediately, okay, we're we don't deal with this shit on a daily basis. Let's call everybody, get everybody here. And so, Michigan State Police were on scene right away. They also called in resources from Macomb County, which, being right near Detroit, I'm sure that the county investigators deal with a lot more crimes like this than the Armada Police Department does, so they called for reinforcements immediately. They didn't get arrogant. They were like, okay, we need everybody. We need to get this shit figured out. And so Austin explains that, and this is where I say he's a dumbass kid. Don't do this shit ever. But he explains that he panicked when he was brought to the police station and erased several text messages between him and April, which makes him look guilty as hell. Hats off to the kid for coming out and being like, I did something really stupid. I deleted all these text messages. And
yeah, no doubt.
I understand. And again, it does really speak to him that the cops didn't have to pull phone records and come back and say, okay, well, you're showing us 2 text messages, but we in your phone records are seeing 20. So none of that shit happened. I
didn't waste up a lot of time.
I think he panicked when he was brought to the police station and was like, oh shit, we've been fighting and I called her a dumb whatever, whatever it was. And so he quickly deleted those. And then when they get him in the interrogation room, the kid's like, I did something dumb. And so I think it's obvious he wasn't really, I can't say he wasn't trying to hide something because he definitely was, but he wasn't trying to hide that he had done something terrible
to
her. He was trying to hide the fact that they were fighting, and he's a dumb kid who'd probably never been questioned by police. I have no reason to believe that this kid was any sort of a troublemaker or anything. I think he was a bit of a clown and probably got in some trouble at school and stuff, but nothing serious.
Probably just didn't want her parents upset with him.
Right, and he didn't want the cops to read these texts and be like, oh, you killed her, didn't you? And so
you called her this name.
Right. Yep. Or you said you didn't like her anymore, or, whatever. I have no idea what the text said, but, when you're young and dumb, you can say some dumb shit like, I hope you die, or something dumb like that in the heat of the moment is like, you're being an idiot. But when somebody's dead, murdered, okay, now you said you wanted this person dead. And I don't know if that's what the text said. I'm just using that as an example. He didn't want them seen. He erased them. But then he owned up to it right away and said, I'm an idiot and I did something dumb. So, but they questioned the shit out of this kid. And he says that he was with his friend in a nearby town. It was about, I think, 15 miles away. And, they were playing video games, doing teenage kid shit. Then they ended up going to McDonald's, went through the McDonald's drive-through. And spoiler alert, the cops are going to research all of that because that's what good cops do. They're going to pull the security footage from the McDonald's. They're going to see these 2 kids going through the drive-through right about the time that she's being murdered. And so it's going to become very obvious Austin had no part in this whatsoever. He's just a dumb kid that did something stupid. And so he also took a lie detector test, which he passed. And so Austin is eliminated as a suspect pretty early on. Immediately, everybody's looking at this kid because they're fighting and all this, but all that went away pretty quickly. So at the same time that Austin's being questioned, Jennifer Millsap and David are also being questioned. And, in that position, it's treading a very difficult line, like I said, for the cops as well, because you certainly don't want to make what she's going through worse. but you also have to get these answers. I mean, it's just an impossible situation. And this poor woman is going through unbelievable grief. She recounts her last moments with April, stressing how normal it was. And, nothing odd happened. And, they said, I love you on her way out the door. I mean, it was just a normal, if you're a parent, it's one of those things that you go through pretty much every day of your child's life. Once they get to the age where they can go outside and play by themselves, this is the conversation you have with them every day until they move out of your house, Yeah. Okay, love you, be back in by this time. Okay, love you, And so
if you need me.
Exactly. So you can just know how it went, And so, but Jennifer is as helpful as she possibly can be in explaining the timeline, when April left the house, all of that kind of stuff. And the kind of crazy thing about this is, there's nothing in April's life that would indicate anything like this. No, stalkerish, weird behavior. No, nothing. No fights. No, nothing. And we talked about in the first episode when we were talking about who April was. She was really a good kid. She was active in her church. She did good in school. She's not out doing drugs or partying or doing none of this nonsense. And so, asked who would possibly do this. And the family's like,
yeah,
we got nothing. No idea. And so the detectives, including Chief Howard Smith, Sergeant Ray Patrick, Joseph Swink, they focus on those closest to April 1st, obviously, which investigations almost always do, And Austin and his friend Alex were immediately suspected. And then, like I said, they pulled the footage and all that kind of stuff, and they cleared those. They cleared them. They looked at the family. Nothing really fit. And so they just kind of work through eliminating her friends and family. That's who they're looking at. They have really no other direction to go at this point. And so, while they're at the police station questioning the family and questioning Austin and talking with his parents, the crime scene units are still back at the crime scene with other local law enforcement. They've got the area secured. They immediately begin searching. I told you they set up all the big lights. They lit the area up. And so they're working, through the night. April's body is taken, to the coroner. And so the police station obviously becomes a crucible of tension with Austin's visible nervousness. And, his parents have got to be both pissed off and frustrated. I can just imagine, like, what in the hell did you erase the freaking text messages for?
Yeah.
Also, okay, my young son, I think he was 14 as well. He's been here all night. Are you done with him? I'm taking it. I mean, it's just, it's got to be so hard for everybody. It's got to be hard for him. It's got to be hard for his parents. Obviously, it's hard for April's parents. It's hard for the police. It just sucks. Anytime kids are involved, of course, I mean, any murder is tough, but anytime kids are involved, it's just so much worse, So early in the morning of the next day, which would be Friday, July 25th, 2014, sometime after midnight, Jennifer is sent home. She's released from the police station. And this is after a long, we said it was roughly 8 o'clock or so that she was sent to the police station and questioning began and all that. So 7:30, 8 o'clock, somewhere around in there. This is sometime early morning, I don't know, after midnight. So you're talking at least 4 or 5 hours of going through this shit. And, anybody that's experienced even a normal kind of death, you get a call, your grandpa died or, whatever. You go through, immediately it hits you. If it's unexpected, it hits you in the face. And then you got to go through this whole period of, the stages of grief, the bargaining, the denial, but when you're in a position like her poor mom and dad, you don't even get to start that shit because you're dealing with the police, you're answering questions, you're trying to, and so none of that even would sink in or even begin until you get home. And then it's got to be like, I can't even imagine you going home to this empty house because your little girl's not there anymore, you know, and Penny is, and Penny was with her.
Penny's losing her shit.
I mean, it had to be so hard, you know, and so obviously it was a long, emotional draining night at the police station, and she's sent home without the explicit confirmation that the recovered body was April. Like, she knows, but doesn't know.
So still a tiny chance in your brain.
Right.
Trying to grapple with that.
Yeah. So you're basically left in a position where, okay, your daughter's missing. A body has been found. We don't know if it's her yet.
They're acting like it's her, but no one has specifically said. So you're telling me there's a chance.
Well, the police have specifically said we cannot confirm at this time.
Yeah.
So it, like, to your point, I don't give a shit who you are. Rationally, you might know, but emotionally, in your heart, you're still like, maybe it's not. Maybe something happened to this girl and April ran away and got lost in the woods. Or, I mean, you're going to be creating all of these scenarios for that not to be your baby girl.
All the scenarios
laying out there, you know? And so, but obviously, I cannot fault the police for this. This is standard procedure. What I got to give these cops kudos for is they didn't ask them to identify the body, which happens a lot. And I almost always disagree with it, because you're talking about planting in somebody's mind the worst possible image to carry for the rest of their life. And I don't care who you are, if you've ever been put in that situation where you have to identify a body, every time you think of that person for the rest of your life, that's the first image you have. And so I know it's hard to not have the answers, but it's better than that. So, you know, kudos for these cops for not saying, okay, we need you to identify her, and saying, we'll use DNA, whatever. We're going to use dental records, but we're not going to put you through that. And so I know it's hard, but it's the right way to handle it. And so then also Friday morning, a canine officer is brought in, and I can't remember his name. I think it's Buddy. I know I have it in my notes. I'm going to be coming across it, so forgive me. But I think it's like Buddy is brought in, and he's a bloodhound. And so he tracks this scent about a half a mile east of the crime scene, where he finds April's cell phone in the brush off of Omo Road. And so that confirms that the killer removed her phone while fleeing, which supports the evidence of the motorcycle escape theory, which is starting to be talked about as these witnesses come forward and say that they saw a douchebag on a white and blue motorcycle. And he's a douchebag, even if he's not the killer, because he's riding a dirt bike on a walking trail. The piece of shit needs punched in the face for that alone, because this is not a dirt bike trail. Matter of fact, it's not legal to be riding dirt bikes on this trail. So he's a piece of shit before we even know for sure that he's a real piece of shit. But this also helps to pinpoint the path and the possible escape route. And it allows investigators to access this critical digital data in this fitness tracker app, which is on her phone. Because, like I said, it's not a wearable. So without the phone, they don't have access to it. So now they found the phone. Now they can access it. And by 2014, we were very much in the world that we're in now, where I mean, if somebody's murdered, if somebody goes missing, if anything happens to somebody, their cell phone is like the best evidence there is, period. And in this case, it's really the best evidence. But, it's like that pretty much every case anymore. I think that's the first thing that cops want. They want your cell phone. And if you're a suspect, they want your cell phone, because the amount of shit that's on your cell phone at any given time pretty much explains everything that you've been up to and everything that you've thought about for the last whatever. I mean, it's crazy what we do, but I'm as bad as anybody. I mean, if they ever find my cell phone, they're going to be like, we've got to get this guy and get him stopped now, because all he does is look up killers and autopsy shit. He's a psycho. I'm telling you what. But I don't think I'm alone there. I think pretty much all true crime podcasters are like, please, God, don't ever let them search my cell phone or computer, because the stuff that we have to look at is insane. And then also by Friday morning, cops have acquired the McDonald's security footage, and they've confirmed that Austin and Alex were at the drive-thru at the time of April's attack. The call records and interviews that they conduct further support his alibi. And so by this time, Friday morning, the day after, Austin is decisively ruled out as a suspect. And, that's through all of those different things. So the cops thoroughly looked at this kid, and then they were like, okay, he's just a dipshit. He's just a dipshit 14-year-old kid. That's it. That's all, And I don't say that in a mean way, because we're all dipshits when we're 14 years old. We all do these dumbass things like, if I just delete the text messages, nobody will ever know.
Goes away forever.
Yeah, it was a total kid thing to do. And so I'm not hacking on this kid for it whatsoever. But it was also not the brightest move.
Yeah. Well,
so
telling the truth was very strong.
Very smart to get in there and immediately be like, I just did something really freaking stupid. Mm-hmm. So, also by midday on Friday, this motorcycle connection is really starting to come out. Now we have multiple witnesses that say, that there is this blue and white motorcycle that was on the trail. And so immediately they put out an APB on this motorcycle, looking for this motorcycle. And this cop happens to be driving down the road, and he looks over, and there's this white and blue motorcycle parked in front of this garage. And so the cop is like, okay, interesting. And so instead of being like so many dumbass cops that we talk about, and he drives on and the motorcycle, no. This dude, he gets out of his car and takes his handy dandy little cell phone, and he snaps a couple pictures of this thing, because although he has no probable cause to go searching or nothing like that, he wants a record of this. So he takes a picture of this motorcycle.
Public sidewalk, so he can.
Yeah, you can take a picture from a public sidewalk. So they did absolutely nothing wrong whatsoever. And then the police, by this point, the FBI is now involved. So like I said, they called in everybody as fast as they possibly could. So the police are ramping up their efforts. They widen the suspect focus beyond the immediate friends and family. They've pretty much ruled all of them out. And so now they're looking much broader and starting to hear a lot about this motorcycle and believing this might be a stranger on stranger type attack. And then they're coordinating with the FBI and the Violent Crimes Task Force in a broader investigative and forensic focus. And so by around 1:30 that afternoon, FBI investigators visit Jennifer and David. And unfortunately, this is the point in time where April is positively identified as being April. Jennifer and David are informed that she's gone, and obviously all their hope collapses in on them, and now it's just nothing but grief and anger and all the emotions that any poor parent goes through, when they discover their baby's gone, And so the family's private nightmare becomes official and it becomes public, which intensifies their trauma. I can't imagine how difficult that must be, going through something so intensely painful in such a public way, where you have, news reporters and all this shit asking for interviews, and even friends and family with the best intentions. You've got this investigation going on. It's all over the news. It's probably on the news every time the news is on, morning, noon, and night, and so it's just got to be unbelievably painful and difficult. And, I've heard several of these families that have said, we couldn't watch TV for like years, because every time we turn the TV on, we're taken back to that moment, even a year later, and then what happens in a lot of these cases is then you get these anniversary editions where every year on the anniversary, then they do another story. And that's not just strictly this case, it's all of them, and especially the big news cases, where it's forever. Now, I gotta give another trigger warning, because we're about to talk about the autopsy and what the medical examiner is going to find. And so, again, if you're sensitive to this, if it's, fast forward, skip over this part, whatever, because it's awful. It's just everything about this case is awful. But the autopsy was performed by Macomb County Deputy Medical Examiner Mary Petrogallo, and the cause of death is determined to be what?
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, it's because James Petrogallo does small town murder.
Why is that something?
Which is another really freaking great podcast. If you're a true crime junkie, you probably already know it. Small Town Murder. Hat tip to Jimmy and James, but James Petrogallo is one of those. Yeah. So
it's just totally light bulb. Like, why?
Yeah, that's, I'm sure, what you're thinking of.
I'm sorry to have interrupted.
That's okay. So the cause of death is determined to be blunt head trauma and asphyxiation due to neck compression. Obviously, manner of death is determined to be homicide, and the duration of the attack was determined that it lasted for over 10 minutes, which is an unbelievably long time to be going through something like that. And that was from the initial blow to the final neck compression, which puts the timeline for the deaths to be between 6:30 and 8 o'clock. So April sustained at least 48 injuries, with the majority focused on her head and neck. So she had at least 23 head and facial injuries. She had bruises over her right eyelid, small hemorrhages in both eyes, inside of her mouth, both upper and lower lip and gums from increased cranial pressure. She had a bruise on her tongue. Her left eye was swollen closed and cut under the eye with a bruise above the left eye. She had a cut beneath her left eyebrow caused by a smooth object heavier than a hand, likely a motorcycle helmet. She had a bruise on the bridge of her nose, 3 linear cuts above her left eyebrow, hemorrhages on both sides of the temples and the top and back of her head extending into deep brain tissue, significant swelling and lacerations. Head injuries required extreme force comparable to vehicle pedestrian accidents or major falls. And then she had at least 11 injuries to her neck, including abrasions and bruises including a 6-inch herringbone pattern red bruise across the neck, abrasions to her lower neck, and internal muscle hemorrhaging, hemorrhages throughout the trachea and the thyroid cartilage, petechial hemorrhages consistent with strangulation, damage to underlying soft tissue mapped thoroughly in court testimony. Then to her torso and extremities, she had an additional 14 injuries, including internal bleeding above the aorta valve of her heart, indicating a significant impact to the chest. Bruises and cuts on her arms, hands, and lower body, consistent with defensive wounds and attempts to restrain her. She had shoe prints on her chest, neck, face, and jaw, showing repeated stomping and force consistent with standing on the neck and upper chest. So then the evidence of the assault and the weapon that came from the autopsy: April was beaten and stomped to death. Forceful blunt trauma was applied with a motorcycle helmet. A bruise above her eye matched the impression of a motorcycle helmet. Then we have the pattern shoe prints and the distinctive herringbone pattern with the Jumpman logo from the Nike Air Jordan shoes that were found on her body. Her clothing, which we'd already talked about, was pulled down, ripped off, and there was numerous signs of attempted sexual assault, but no evidence of a completed rape. There was no semen recovered, and so prosecutors would later argue that the attacker was interrupted or decided to flee at some moment before he finished the sexual assault. Leaf material and plant debris were found clutched in April's hand, which is strong evidence of a defensive struggle, and blood was visible on her face and in her hair. And then we have the fly eggs, which I already mentioned, which indicate that she had been dead between 30 to 60 minutes before her body was found. So despite the brutality of the attack, there was no DNA, no fingerprints, no hair, no semen directly linked to a perpetrator. So I found that almost hard to believe.
Yeah, a shame, but I feel like she'd have hair and her fingers too, but something.
Keep in mind, the son of a bitch likely had a motorcycle helmet on and very well could have waited until she was on the ground before he took it off. And so, I mean, you think about it, because I kind of went the same direction, and then I got to thinking, okay, you're riding on a motorcycle. He had on a long sleeve jacket.
Yeah.
He had on a motorcycle helmet. I'm pretty sure he had on gloves. There's not a lot to get a hold of.
Yeah.
You know? And she's a little bitty 14-year-old girl. So he would have overpowered her immediately. So, like I said, just to recap, her autopsy documented 48 injuries, 23 to the head and face, 11 to her neck, 14 to her torso and extremities, evidence of attempted sexual assault, prolonged force, and then the direct forensic shoe and helmet impressions. So these findings, combined with the digital evidence that they're going to find, testimony, circumstantial evidence, are going to be critical in reconstructing the murder, validating the eyewitness accounts, and then obviously prosecuting this piece of shit that would do this to a little girl. And no matter who it turned out to be, this guy's an absolute freaking animal. So then on the evening of July 24th, which I know I went forward and then jumped back again, but this is the night, either the night that she was murdered or early that morning, while Austin and mom and dad and everybody's at the police station. The cops are busy. The other cops are busy investigating the crime scene. Then we get some weird ass shit that goes down. So multiple teens and young adults use this trail, right? And so several of them are interviewed by police, including one who's drunk off his ass. And this dumb shit is not just drunk off his ass. He's drunk and he's going on and on about April and how wonderful she is and all of this. And the cops are like, what is up with this little shit? You know, this is weird. This is beyond weird. So they take this drunk ass little shit to the police station and put him in a cell. And then, and you can find like video of him in the cell. He's drunker and shit, but they can't really interrogate him for a couple reasons. One, he's drunk off his ass, and two, he's a minor. And so, but it's really, really fishy. But then they get to investigating him, and once he sobers up, his parents bring him in. They go through the whole questioning and everything. It turns out he's just a dumb kid, and they think that he had like this crush on April. And once he discovered that she was dead, he went out and got drunk and acted like a fool. And it was very suspicious, but the kid had nothing to do with it. It's just a small little caveat. But, you know, the police cross-reference his statements with other witness interviews. They checked the cell phone records. I mean, they looked into this kid extensively, but he didn't have anything to do with it. And so there was no physical evidence whatsoever linking this kid to it. It was just a weird little thing. Yeah. And then shortly after her murder, like the next day, this teenage girl calls the cops and was like, so I was walking home and this white van was following me. And then the driver of the van started pointing at me. There was like 3 people in the van, and the driver started pointing at me, and it creeped me out. She was so creeped out, she took out her cell phone and took a video of this van. So this isn't a girl that's making shit up. Yeah. This happened. She has the video of it. So the police obviously take this video and get it out to the media as fast as they can. And, you know, they do the whole thing of,
be on the lookout for this.
We're looking for this guy. He's not necessarily a suspect, but he might be a witness. You know how they do. Mm-hmm. And so, dude,
have information.
Exactly. Yes. And so dude calls the cops, and it's funny because if you see, there's several different shows that cover this case, and I don't know if it's theatrics or bad researching. I don't know for sure what it is, but on most of them, actually, they show the cops pulling this van over and pulling this guy out of the van and doing, holding their guns on him and all that. None of that shit happened. So I don't know where they get it, because this dude calls the cops and he's like, that's my white van that you have on the TV. And I'm glad to come in and talk to you. I have nothing to do with this. There was no guns pulled. There was no cops that hunted this guy down. He was a stand-up dude that went into the police and said, yeah, that was me, but I wasn't pointing at this girl. He said, I had a couple of my employees with me, and this guy's a contractor, and he was showing them houses that he'd worked on. And so he's driving through the neighborhood pointing at these houses like, oh yeah, I built this one, or I did that one. Yeah. Absolutely not the girl's fault whatsoever. I completely understand. And hey, by all means, somebody creeps you out, freaking get a video of their shit, whether it's real or not real. There is nothing wrong with what this girl did. As a matter of fact, exactly. she is an example of what you do if something creeps you out, you know?
Because if they're really meant to be creeping you out, they're going to run away or try to get that from you.
Exactly.
So
yeah, or
you'd be wrong.
Or they're creepy and they're like, okay, well, let's get out of here because she's onto us. But then something bad happens like this.
Yeah.
If this would have been the killer, this little girl would have saved the freaking day by having this video. So I'm certainly not attacking her in any way, shape, or form. You can understand where she was at, and then, but you can also understand this guy's like, yeah.
Just show him what I've done, yeah.
Yes. And so it's really unfortunate that there's multiple shows that get this part wrong, and it really sucks because I think this guy, he deserves a kudos, because he was a stand-up guy. He didn't do anything wrong. And then,
like, that's my van, but I'm not saying anything.
Yeah, he could have just not said nothing. But no, he called the cops and was like, yeah, this is mine. And I've got a perfectly reasonable explanation. And so anyway, the cops look into him, but there was nothing obviously tying him to it. And so they clear him right away as well. But, the other component of that, which is I really say is a stand-up move on this guy's part. And if you're ever in a situation where you think that the cops are looking for you, possibly in connection with something like this, get that shit out there and talk to them, because is what it allows them to do then is say, okay, it wasn't him. Now we can drop this, quit wasting resources looking for this white man, and focus our attention where it needs to be focused. So it's very important to get cleared as a suspect so that the cops can stop wasting their time on you.
Yeah.
And if you're guilty, then kiss my ass, turn yourself in and go to jail. But you don't deserve to be anyway. So anyway, both the drunk teenager and the white van seemed like they were really important leads initially. And then they just kind of disappeared. Yeah. Buster is the canine's name. So Buster is the trained bloodhound from Macomb County Sheriff's Office that found April's cell phone. He was
Buster.
Yeah, and so Buster was given one of April's shoes and put on the scent, and then he followed the scent down local streets. He doubled back to April's home, which confirmed that he was on the trail. And then he continued after that. He led the investigators away from the Macomb Orchard Trail, headed west and then east toward Omo Road. And officers are led to a driveway and then a nearby brush just off of Omo Road. And like I said before, it was approximately a half a mile east of the murder site. And that's where they found her phone lying in a brush. The screen was cracked. The case was split into two pieces, and it was found about 60 feet apart. So the phone case was found over here, and about 60 feet away is where her phone was found with the screen cracked. But luckily, all the data on it and everything was retrievable. So this recovered cell phone, it quickly becomes the most critical piece of evidence. It provides the timelines, the movements, everything, which is nothing new. I mean, like I said earlier, that's how so many cases are solved these days, is using cell phone data and everything. So several days after July 25th, searchers initiate a grid search, and law enforcement teams are mobilized using ATVs, foot patrols, drones, and then they also coordinate volunteers and do a systematic grid search along April's known path. Search teams expand coverage to the wooded areas, backyards, all plausible disposal spots for in that vicinity. And police also drain local pools in both private and public spaces, suspecting that, because they're looking for her backpack, and they're suspecting that it might have been discarded into a pool or a pond. So they're looking everywhere. So after days of persistent effort, the officers locate her backpack thrown into a backyard. Some sources suggest that it was in or near a pool, but everything that I found and looking at I looked at Google Earth images of the area, and there really isn't any pools or ponds anywhere near. So I don't think it's true. It was just found in somebody's backyard. I couldn't find the exact date on that the backpack was found, but it definitely was after the phone was found, and likely after the whole weekend. So probably a few days after the murder. Not terribly far. And then same as the phone, forensic experts take the backpack and examine it. They search for DNA, fingerprints, trace evidence, but again, nothing is found. And so talking to witnesses and everything, multiple independent witnesses report that blue and white motorcycle persistently riding in the vicinity of April along the trail just before her disappearance. And several described the motorcycle as being operated by a man matching a subsequent composite sketch that's going to come out. And the witness settings eventually become the entire focal point of the investigation. They're consistently corroborated in interviews. Pretty much all of the witnesses report very similar things. Police didn't yet have a name or a registration or anything tied to the motorcycle. I said that one cop had taken a picture of a motorcycle at a house. But based on the reported descriptions from all of the different witnesses, they do come up with a composite sketch of a person of interest. He's a male, estimated to be mid to late 20s. He has curly, brushy hair, no facial hair, and the sketch was distributed across TV, newspapers, social media, everywhere, And then on July 31st, law enforcement coordinated a major rolling canvass in and around Armada, intentionally scheduled for the same weekday and the same time as April's walk. And so teams set up roadblocks, stopping and questioning hundreds of drivers and motorcyclists, especially documenting their identities, asking for any observations, if they'd seen any suspicious activity, all of that kind of stuff. Investigators collected 5 to 8 valuable new tips out of that, which were checked and folded into the case files, including further vehicle sightings and potential patterns in the witness timelines. And so this everyone as a potential witness strategy reflects both the limited early evidence and the all hands community first approach. To me, it just speaks to these cops were not screwing around. I mean, they were like, whatever it takes, go out and pull over every driver on those roads and talk to them. I don't give a shit if it takes 7 days. I want to talk to everybody. I mean, they were like on it, And then the FBI's computer analysis response team joined on the technical side of the investigation. They received April's cell phone and started a deep forensic review of it. And then CART agents focused on extracting and interpreting the GPS data, the text logs, and then obviously that sports tracker app data, which it's no secret is going to be huge in this case. And the FBI used this digital evidence to create a minute-by-minute Google Earth animation, which is the one I was telling you can find in View, and it's freaking crazy. And then the case was getting just extensive media coverage at this time. Michigan's local press, TV, radio, newspapers, they are all covering it like crazy. Then the national media picked it up, and that was primarily just due to the story's tragic elements, being a 14-year-old girl who is a good kid, a good student, active in her church. Again, we're not talking about a 14-year-old that was out partying and doing stuff she shouldn't. So this drew national attention for those reasons. And most coverage presented the case as both a community safety crisis and a rare act of just random violence. And by this time, it's really becoming obvious that this was a stranger on stranger type crime. This was not somebody that she knew, which it's what we all fear, stranger on stranger crimes. Fact of the matter is, they're relatively rare in the grand scheme of things, and so when they do happen, it's usually these crimes that we talk about because, they really make the headlines. And just to recap, Armada is this little rural farming town. You told us about it on the last episode. No recordable homicides in at least 41 years. So this poor town is rocked to its core by this murder. And then I can just imagine the parents reacting all over the area.
Yeah, you're not
Kids
anywhere.
Oh yeah, kids are not allowed to go out unsupervised. Buddy systems have to be used. Early curfews are going to be instituted by families, and also local schools adapted bus and pickup routes to enhance safety for all students. So the whole community, which you would expect, is like, what do we do to make sure this never happens again? And we still got a madman on the loose out there. We don't even know who did this. So, these kids cannot be out alone, unsupervised. But then the town really united around the Millsap family as well. Like I said, pink ribbons were everywhere. They were on storefronts, on trees, lampposts, on cars, all of that as a tribute to April's favorite color and a visible symbol of just a shared mourning throughout the entire community. April's middle school planted a memorial tree. There were candlelight vigils that drew hundreds, with crowds standing silently in memory and solidarity, many of them holding pink candles and balloons. April's dog Penny became an unexpected symbol of loyalty and survivor's instinct. Many residents expressed comfort that April was not alone, that she had Penny with her at the end. And then,
Penny.
Yeah. And then her funeral was held August 4th. Hundreds attended. Many of them wore pink. The scene unified the town further. Residents described the funeral as both unbearably sad and powerfully supportive. Jennifer Millsap, April's mom, thanked the community in press statements and in eulogies, expressing the town's unity, and the outpouring of love gave the family strength to face their loss. And so the whole tone of this period is, the town, the family, everybody involved in this is confused, scared, and, mourning this tragedy kind of all at the same time. And you could kind of imagine what they're going through, because at this point, we don't know who did this. So we're petrified. We're terrified to let our kids even out of our sight, to do anything. And yet we've got this poor family that's grieving this loss. And we talked about it in the first episode, where this is a tiny town where everybody knows somebody. Most of the town is connected to this girl in some way, shape, or form. Everybody's grieving. Everybody's scared. I mean, this is the kind of thing where living in a small town has its pluses and minuses. This is a minus, because when something tragic like this happens, it personally affects every person in that town, honey. Law enforcement was beset by leads ranging from the plausible to completely implausible. The community shock was deepened and shaped by the saturated media coverage, putting Armada under a national microscope and increasing the pressure on the investigators. And for April's family, public unity and constant support gave small comfort in the face of near unbearable tragedy, and I've said it a million times. I'll say it, I'm sure, a million more. I cannot imagine the grief of burying a child.
Yeah.
This was Jennifer's only child. So I'm not saying that it's worse. It's just uniquely painful, I guess. It's in a different way. Maybe it's easier, maybe it's harder, just depending, because you can say the same thing about a parent that not only has to grieve the loss of their child, but also has to try to support and continue to love and support their remaining children. So, I'm not saying that one is easier or harder or better or worse. I'm just saying it has to be overwhelmingly quiet instantly at home when you go from having a child to no child. As an empty nester, I can relate in only a teeny tiny little way of when your kids move out of the house. You're not grieving. In some ways you are, but in other ways you're celebrating and dancing an Irish jig. So, but it's very quiet and you're left with like, what do I do now? Like, I've been a parent for almost 20 years, and actually for me, because I had more than one kid, it was more than 20 years. And then you're like, now what? And you got to kind of go through that, finding who you are when, obviously you're always a parent, but you know how it's different at that point.
Yeah.
And so going through that, but also going through the grief of mourning, actually losing it, I cannot imagine it. It hurts too bad to even attempt to imagine it, And so I think that's a good place for us to leave this episode. We're kind of discovering a little bit more as we walk through this. So we'll be discovering the piece of shit that's responsible for this because, spoiler alert, this is a solved case. So thank God for that. But with that, do you have anything to add or anything before we move on with the end of it? Okay.
Just pain.
Yeah, it's a rough one. I told you it was rough.
You did.
Yeah.
Calling you a liar.
The woods along Macomb Orchard Trail used to feel peaceful, familiar, safe. After July 24, 2014, that changed. The trail became a symbol of what was lost, a stark reminder of how quickly a life can be stolen. The crime scene that investigators faced that night wasn't just tragic. It spoke of rage, a sudden, targeted attack against a young girl simply out for a walk with her dog. April's injuries made one thing painfully clear. This was not panic or accident. It was deliberate, controlled, and devastatingly brutal. Yet, even with such a clear story written in violence, the first hours and days offered no real answers, no suspect, no weapons, only a wave of fear that transformed Armada from a quiet small town into the center of a mystery. Parents stopped letting their children go out of sight. Neighbors grew wary. News vans came pouring in. And above it all, one question haunted everyone. Who could have done this to April Millsap? Law enforcement got to work sifting through tips, tracking down everything from suspicious vehicles to anonymous calls. But it was digital breadcrumbs, text messages, cell phone records, fitness app data that started to guide investigators, offering their first clues about April's final moments on the trail. The physical evidence would take time to analyze, but in those early days, technology began to whisper parts of the truth. Behind every search warrant and every data ping, there was a family waiting, a community grappling with how a predator might have watched and waited unseen, and a young girl whose ordinary day shattered an entire town. This case wasn't just about finding who did it. It was about the collective fear. Would they strike again? Until someone was named and arrested, each day was defined not only by grief, but by a community's fight to survive. Next time, we'll follow the trail even further. Mysterious sightings, composite sketches, and the turning point when law enforcement finally connected the dots and locked in on a suspect. But tonight, the story closes where the investigation began, in those darkening woods, with a town full of questions and a family clinging to the only thing they have left: hope for justice. It's tempting in stories like this to let the darkness overshadow everything else, to see only the loss, feel only the fear, replay only those final moments. But April Millsap wasn't defined by her last day. She was 1,000 ordinary days, each one stitched with joy, curiosity, and heart. April's world was full of small wonders, a blizzard of Post-it notes and doodles on her bedroom wall, music drifting from her headphones as she walked the trail, whispered secrets traded with Penny on lazy afternoons. She navigated life with her mom, not just as a parent and child, but as partners in adventure. Together, they built inside jokes that no one else could quite understand. They shared routines that shaped both comfort and trust. April brought a singular, gentle energy wherever she went. She noticed the quiet ones in the corner and made them feel seen. She had time for strays, canine, feline, or human, and her kindness wasn't performative. It was woven deep, automatic. Her friends remember the way her laughter rippled through a room, unpredictable, genuine, leaving echoes that lingered long after the moment passed. She imagined big futures for herself, veterinary school, maybe a rescue shelter of her own, a life spent advocating for those who couldn't speak. But even at 14, she was already living by those values. She stood up for others. She reached out when she saw pain. She didn't just talk about loving animals, she showed it. Penny was more than a dog. She was April's confidant, her shadow, her silent anchor on every walk through Armada's trails. When April didn't come home, her mom sensed the difference. Not just fear, but a silence in her heart. April's loyalty and love lingered even in absence. What the world lost wasn't just April's presence, but the promise that she carried. All the stray dogs she would have rescued, the friendship she would have nourished, the kindness she would have multiplied. Each life she touched bears the quiet mark of a spirit that refused to settle for the ordinary. We tell April's story because it deserves to be known, not for the violence that ended it, but for the grace and the courage that filled it, her laughter, her dreams, her love for every stray and stranger. That's the real legacy. This is April Millsap. Her story isn't over, and neither is our tribute. So that wraps up this episode of Dark Dialogue. The scene in the trees told a story of violence, but it also left behind pieces, clues, data, and evidence that would become the foundation of a complex investigation.
Investigation is just getting started. The digital trail April left behind, her texts, her Fitbit, her phone, it all started to map her final moments, and somewhere in that data, the truth was waiting to be uncovered.
Next time, we'll talk about the man on the motorcycle, the tips that poured in, and the first major suspect in April's case. But before we go, if you believe stories like April's deserve to be heard, here's how you can help.
Follow the show, leave a review, give us a thumbs up, and share the episode with someone who needs to hear it. Awareness matters. The more ears we reach, the harder it is for cases like this to go quiet.
You can also support our work through Patreon and Ko-fi, or by subscribing to our Substack, where we post behind-the-scenes content, case updates, and deeper dives into the investigations that we cover.
Want to get involved directly? Join the Dark Dialogue Collective, a growing network of listeners, advocates, and researchers working together to keep these cases alive. Or visit our website to learn about the Adopt a Victim program, where you can get involved and help research and spotlight cases that still need answers.
And if you have a tip, a case suggestion, or just something to share, email us anytime at info@darkdialogue.com. We read everything and we follow every lead.
April Millsap mattered, and her story isn't over.
This has been Dark Dialogue. Keep listening, keep digging, and keep the dialogue alive.